Well, it's not even March, and the Rangers have already played a full week of spring training games. Thanks for joining us on this week's Sports Day Rangers. I'm John Blake, and I'm in Grapevine, Arlington, and today in Dallas.
How can you be in three places at one time?
Very flexible. I'm like Gumby.
You're Gumby, all right. You're Gumby, damn it. I'm Evan Grant, and I'm in Surprise, where I'll be for a couple more days before jetting back to Dallas for a few days of rest.
And again, one of the reasons we've talked about this, that the game started so early, is that next week, coming up, the World Baseball Classic begins its sixth iteration on March the 4th in Tokyo, and then the next day, the games in San Juan, Houston, and Miami.
And our guest this week has ties to both the Rangers and the WBC. Rangers of old and Rangers of current. Former shortstop Benji Gil, who is the manager for Team Mexico in the WBC. He'll have on his WBC team Rangers reliever Robert Garcia and outfielder Alejandro Osuna, who he also managed in the Mexican Winter League for a month. So looking forward to talking with Benji about Alejandro.
And Benji is the only man that ever lost his starting shortstop job twice to Kevin Elster, by the way, just so. And we'll get into that a little bit. Well, we started the archives in Arlington for these spring training shows talking about good old Pompano Beach. And today we'll move on to Evan's favorite stomping ground, Port Charlotte, Florida, where the team trained from 1987 through 2002.
I didn't know how good we had it in Port Charlotte until we got out to the desert, but that's another story. You can reach us on X with any Rangers questions or comments. I'm at Evan_P_Grant. And John is at Ranger Blake, all one word, Ranger Blake, at the Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. You can also reach me at my email, egrant@dallasnews.com. On Blue Sky or on Instagram. I'm all over the place with the same handle everywhere.
Evan has started a new YouTube version of spring training, and you need to catch that. But anyway, talking about spring training, club's a weekend now. All the starters have kind of run through the rotation here in the first 5 games, except for Jacob deGrom, and that includes both Kumar Rocker and Jacob Latz, who pitched on Tuesday, pitched pretty well, Evan. And I know it's real early. I mean, listening to Skip Schumacher, have you guys ask questions and try to dissect these early starts. But what are your feelings early on here as the starting rotation starts to work itself out a little bit?
For me, John, the thing that stands out most is, seems like every spring we talk about the starting rotation and what's going to be the starting rotation. And this spring, obviously, the question is, will this offense bounce back? And to that, on that front, I've been impressed by what I've seen out of Josh Young in his first couple games. I know he did strike out in the at-bat I saw today before coming back over here to do the podcast, but his first 4 at-bats over his first 2 games, he'd made hard contact every time out, averaged 102.5 miles an hour off the bat. He hit a 2-strike pitch the other way for a base hit. Just looked like he was in a really good place with his at bats. I really have liked Evan Carter at the plate so far. He's had some good at bats against lefties early on. Certainly shown the patience that the Rangers expect for him. And it's a big year for both of those guys. So that's encouraging. On the starter side, John, I mean, and hopefully by the time we get this up, my column on Jacob Latz will air, but we'll have posted. But I'm excited about seeing Jacob Latz. And today, at Tuesday, he threw 2 shutout innings, allowed a bloop hit, and did allow a hard hit double. But what stuck out to me was, he threw first pitch strikes to 6 of the 8 hitters he faced. He got several swings and misses. And he threw about 5 curveballs in his 26 pitch outing. And that's something that he made mention of, that he's really trying to incorporate a little bit more into his rotation or into his repertoire, because if he does, now all of a sudden he becomes a true 4-pitch pitcher, and the dedication and determination he's shown to trying to win this starting job over the winter, and really even with his appearances last year, really has resonated with me.
But it all comes down, I'm assuming, in Latz's case, and again, the efficiency and the of Rocker this spring is how this bullpen shakes out. And you've written a lot early on here about some of the younger guys, or some of the Ryan Lobuses and Gavin Colliers and Carter Baumler, who looked like he pitched again pretty well today.
He did. I had a scout tell me that they were really impressed with what they saw today.
So you've got these younger guys, but at the end of the day, it's going to kind of come down, isn't it, to Chris Martin and Garcia and maybe Alexis Diaz and some of the veteran pitchers and how this comes together. Early spring training, you're always looking at kind of the new bright lights, right? But at the end of the day, these established guys are going to see it. And they haven't seen a ton of action yet, right? I mean, they're kind of working some of these guys in.
Correct. And you won't see Chris Martin until probably sometime next week. I mean, he is 39. He's got a long track record. He certainly had a number of injuries last year, so the Rangers are going to ease him in. And I think that's kind of what they did last spring with him. Alexis Diaz was pitching today when I left the ballpark, making his first spring outing. And so, yeah, they are going to fold those guys in slowly and build them up. But I do think that, where Jake Latz is concerned, a lot of what happens with him is not going to be determined by how he performs. It's going to be determined by what Kumar Rocker does. And if the Rangers feel comfortable that Kumar can hold down the number 5 spot, even if it's just for April, with the idea that Cody Bradford would be back, I think that they really like what Jacob can do in the bullpen. I did dig up one stat that's actually in the column that I wrote, but just to kind of amplify how much of a utility pitcher in how valuable he was last year. Jacob had 85 innings pitched in the big leagues. He had a sub-3 ERA. I think for the year it was 2.84. He had a quality start and a save. He's the only pitcher in the big leagues to reach 50 innings and make and have all of those thresholds. So that's why that is why the Rangers really are looking at him for. Certainly in the first month of the season, a multi-inning reliever is very valuable when your pitchers are, on more strict.
Right. Especially when you've got older guys, too, like DeGrom and Evaldi and guys like that, too.
100%. And then later on, he may be an answer for a closer or for even an old school kind of closer who could get you an out if you need to face a lefty in the 8th and then pitch the 9th. So that's the thing the Rangers are going to have to weigh. But I spoke to Jacob at length over the last week, and I really like where his head's at, and I like his approach. And as you and I are both aware, the last Rangers reliever that really committed to wanting to kind of convert to a starter and be outspoken about it was C.J. Wilson.
Correct.
And it worked out.
That was 2010. I mean, that was a long time ago.
And he was a workhorse on 2 teams that went to back-to-back World Series.
Right.
I think that Jake is in a good way. And one way or another, he's going to have a very important role on this team this year.
Okay, let's get back, because you were talking hitting, and I'm interested in this because you're talking about the approach of Josh Young, the approach of Evan Carter, and obviously in these early games, you're looking at very small sample size. The starters are getting 2 at-bats. But have you noticed, going back the 10 days prior to the games, watching live BPs, watching the way they approach their work in the cages, can you tell if there's a difference, even looking back in those situations than what you may have seen last year?
I think that what stuck out for some people in the live BPs, and look, John, you and I have watched live BPs for however long we've watched them, and we know that there's absolutely nothing to get out of them. I remember the first year that the Marlins existed, it was a big story when Orestes Estrada hit his first home run in batting practice, okay? So people make a lot of stuff out of very little at those points in time. But it was, how live batting practices work, and that's all about the pitchers. And so many hitters just go up there to track pitches and to get their timing down and all of that, and their swings don't really matter. But more than one person, myself included, all were very much aware of the fact that Josh hit some balls hard during those live BPs, which is pretty rare. So I do think that this has been a consistent thing for him this spring, and he's talked about being more obsessed with the process and getting back to the process and trying to get away from being so hung up on results. And so far it looks good, but and everybody keeps saying every day, well, it's February 23rd, it's February 20th. And I get all of that, but this is all you have to go on so far. And so far it looks good.
Second base, I mean, a very unfortunate injury to Cody Freeman with the back that's going to put him out 4 to 6 weeks. And you've written this too, while they're not officially saying, Josh Smith, it's your job at second base, it's really the only position he's playing right now in these early games, and all indications would appear that that's the way it's going to go if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I really don't think there's much of a real competition at second base. Maybe there's some, if Duran shows that he's in a position where he is really hitting some left-handed pitching, maybe there's a situation that arises where the Rangers create more of a platoon situation. But look, when Josh sits out, it's going to be against a lefty anyway. So we're talking about maybe 10 or 15 games difference, even if he's a full-time player. He's going to sit out against some lefties. And if he's a platoon player, maybe that means he sits out 30 games as opposed to 15 games. But I don't think that there is much competition there. I think that Cody being out kind of takes that wrinkle out of it. Certainly the Rangers are going to look at incorporating Sam Haggerty into the utility role position, but he's really only a second baseman as a utility guy. Michael Hellman is kind of the same way. They both can play the outfield, but they're just kind of limited to second base as infielders. And that's why I think, Duran is so locked in as the utility infielder, because he's the one guy who can play shortstop.
The left side of the infield, right? I mean, that's right. Both positions if you need to do that.
100%. I think Cody Freeman can play a little bit of third base, but I think that, Duran is certainly able to play both positions on the left side of the field. The one wrinkle in all of that is if you really feel strongly about one of these second basemen, you could potentially keep Josh and move him over to short on the days that Corey Seager needs off.
Yep.
One of them at second base. So That's all still to be worked out. And Skip has really emphasized that, this is not strictly going to be about the 26 best performers in spring training, but about how the roster works best together to give them the most complete arsenal of weapons and tools that they can have.
Okay, last one on the team for this week very quickly. Wyatt Langford makes his debut Tuesday. He is in center field to open that game. Anything significant about that to start?
I think they're going to look at both Evan and Wyatt Langford in center field. I think that is Skip Schumacher's intention. I think the Rangers would like it if Evan can demonstrate to them that he can hold down center field. But you can't, based on the last couple of years, when Evan has been hurt as much as he has, and when he struggled against left-handed pitchers, you can't go into this spring just saying that Evan Carter is your center fielder. You've got to allow for some possibilities there. And so I think that they're going to get Wyatt some significant time in center field and look at that. But I think if everything works the way the Rangers would like, and Evan shows continued good patience and good approach against left-handed pitching, I think the Rangers are going to be more willing to let Evan Carter out of the gate, face some lefties, and play him in center field and play Wyatt in left.
Well, like we said, a long way to go in spring training. It's hard to read. We've all seen the flash in the pans have great starts, and again, by the end of spring, they're long gone. So, anyway, our guest on the podcast this week is former Rangers shortstop Benji Gil. He had an 8-year career, half of it in Texas. He'll also manage Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic, and we'll hear from Benji next. Well, our guest today on SportsDay Rangers is former Ranger infielder Benji Gil, and just now the manager of Team Mexico for the second straight time in the World Baseball Classic this spring. And Benji is a familiar face to Ranger fans. He was the #1 pick. The Rangers, the 19th overall pick in the 1991 draft. Outstanding high school pitcher and shortstop. Went the pitcher route, played in Texas through the 97 season, then played 4 years with the Angels, then the Anaheim Angels, was a member of their 2002 World Series championship team, and then has gone into and played a long time in Mexico before finally retiring after, I think, 21 pro seasons after 2012, and has had a long and successful career as a manager in the Mexican leagues, also coached with the Angels, won numerous titles down there, and was the manager of Charros de Jalisco, which won the 2026 Caribbean World Series. So congratulations on that, Benji. He's also done Spanish radio for the Rangers, and he lives in North Texas, so member of the Ranger alumni. So Benji is in Arizona now, doing some of these early workouts for Team Mexico before the big league players will join him next week at Salt River Fields over in Scottsdale. So Benji, thanks for joining us, and I want to start with the Ranger piece. First question: you came out of high school. I remember when we drafted you, it was pitcher or shortstop, and I think was it the Rangers' decision to draft you as a shortstop? What was your feeling then, whether to pitch or play short?
I'll tell you what. Back then, there was a team, which Seattle. They said I think they got Sean Estes, but they had told me if you decide to pitch, I think that was maybe the 8th pick or 9th pick, and they had told me that they would take me with that pick if I had chose to pitch. I didn't want to pitch. I wanted to hit. I thought I'd get bored pitching. And I would hate to be able to be a pitcher, have 4 days off and be like, man, I'm better than that shortstop. So I figured, okay, I have a good arm. And if I can't hit, if I can't cut it as a hitter, then maybe I can have a backup plan as a pitcher. So
let's fast forward. You had played a year and a half in the minor leagues. You come to Major League Camp in 1993 as a non-roster player at 20 years old. Manny Lee gets hurt. A starting shortstop got hurt, and Benji K had a really good camp. So at 20 years old, never playing above A ball, which has only happened two other times in Ranger history, a guy making a jump from A ball to the majors. You're all of a sudden the starting shortstop on opening day in 1993. What was that camp like for you and that rise?
I'll tell you what. So I had played in Gastonia, which is low A ball that previous summer, and went to winter ball, played winter ball, felt like I, had, made some major strides in who I wanted to become as a hitter and as a player. And my goal was to just get to Double-A. I wanted to skip Port Charlotte and not be in the Florida humidity. So I had a really good camp, and actually Manny Lee had, I think, visa problems first, and then he got there, and 3 days after he gets there,
and he got hurt.
And then he got hurt, and that's what kind of allowed me to continue to stay playing. I think Mario Diaz was one of the
right.
utility infielders, and I just happened to continue to do really well. And much to my surprise, Kevin Kennedy calls me in the office and he goes, "Hey, you have a suit?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Well, you better go to the mall and buy one. You're going to Houston with us for the exhibition game." And I'm like thinking to myself, am I only going for the exhibition game? And he was like, "And you're breaking the club with us." So I was like, wow. I mean, for me, it was surreal to think that two of my idols, right, my biggest idols, one was Nolan and the other was Cal Ripken. Now I'm teammates with one, I'm only playing against the other in my first big league game. That was just incredible.
And that club, and we'll get it, that club had Nolan Ryan, Jose Canseco, Julio Franco. I mean, it was a veteran ball club, and here you are at 20 years old, and you're in the big leagues. But So fast forward a little bit to 1995. Benji comes back and plays a whole season as the Rangers Rookie of the Year. Comes to spring training as the incumbent shortstop in 1996. Has a herniated disc in his back. We have a shortstop, a non-roster guy who had not played a whole lot in the big leagues recently, in Kevin Elster. And Ranger fans know Kevin Elster had 99 RBIs that year. And what was that like? Because the Rangers winning their first division title, that had to be tough for you when you got hurt that spring.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. So I think at the time I had the best year as a shortstop since like Toby Hara. And I honestly felt like I had a really good in '95, a good first half, and struggled to make adjustments in the second half. But I was like, okay, there's some things that I learned during the process. I don't even think I had that good a year. I'm going to have a really good year this year. And talking about '96, and then I herniate the disc, and had surgery late in spring. Had a conversation with Johnny Oates, and he's like, "Hey, nobody loses their job to an injury." And having said that, I didn't lose it to an injury. I lost it to a player that was playing incredibly well. I mean, Kevin had 23 home runs, I think, and 99 RBIs. I think it's an all-time record for RBIs out of the 9 slot. He had an incredible year. So I was like, man, I just want to get back. I want to get back. And honestly, when I went to have surgery, I think more people thought that Kurt Stillwell was going to be the shortstop in my absence, not necessarily Kevin Elster.
Yeah.
I think that was probably more people thought that. And Kevin just had a great season. I think it helped resurrect his career somewhat, or extend his career. And it was awesome for the team. Personally, I mean, I would have much rather been healthy, right, and contribute in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, it was a great year for the Rangers. I was able to get called up in September. I was there for the last month, and was there for that damn Yankees series. But it was awesome, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from the guys and being a part of that postseason.
And then, Evan, one other thing, and we'll talk about managing. Benji's back as a starting shortstop in '97, and guess who returns in that winter? We re-signed Kevin Elster, and Benji gets traded to the White Sox. So Kevin Elster was in his situation with the Rangers twice. So,
and I'll be honest, I had a rough year.
I remember '97 was kind of a rough year for you, and it felt like the Rangers were going to go back and try and recapture that Elster magic, and that didn't really happen in '98. And for the '98 season, it was over. Royce Clayton was playing shortstop. But Benji, I'm really, you're wearing your Team Mexico stuff right now, and I'm really excited for you to get another opportunity with Team Mexico. And it's been a great winter for you with Jalisco, and then winning the Caribbean World Series with Mexico. It was Mexico Red, I think, that won the Caribbean Series, correct?
Yes.
But while you were down there, you had Alejandro Osuna for a month with Jalisco, and I'm just curious what your takeaways were from watching this kid and from what you gathered from him.
I'll tell you what. Pro at bats. I think he didn't. We were trying to win. Obviously, he got there for just the last 2 weeks of the regular season, and then the postseason. And he did everything in his power to. I mean, he hit 7th in the lineup. He hit 2nd in the lineup. He hit 5th, I think 6th, and then he ended up being our leadoff hitter. For a while too. He played left, right, center. And he just got there and he was like, I'm here to win. Whatever you need, I'm all in. And we said, all right, look, we're not going to talk home runs. We're not going to talk that type of stuff. Just give us quality at bats, and be the best winning player you can be. And he was awesome. I mean, bunting, the way he's stealing bases, played excellent defense. Honestly, he played better defense in center field than I was expecting. And he just bought in. He bought into everything that it took to win. And I tell you what, the Rangers have a good one. Have a good one. The young player that wants to. He's like a sponge. He wants to learn. He wants to get better. Um, and we talked about it after we had won, and he didn't stay with us for the Caribbean Series so he could get ready for spring training and to be a part of Team Mexico for the Classic. But he was like, he goes, man, winning is fun. I want to do this my whole career. And he's, he's got a good bloodline on top of it. His dad was a pitcher in Mexico for a long time, obviously his brother. But yeah, he's a winner. He's a winner. He's a good one.
So now you've got a really solid outfield with Jarren Duran, Randy Arozarena, and Alex Thomas, right? You've got three really good outfielders for Team Mexico.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think possibly it might be. I think it's maybe the best defensive outfield in the Classic. I want to believe. And Alex, how much playing time is he going to get? I don't know, but it'll be a great experience. And whatever playing time he does get, I know he's going to take advantage of that opportunity.
No, he said that. Listen, as much as he talked about watching his brother in the WBC in 2017 and how much that it then became a dream for him to represent Mexico in at some point in time. But he also talked about just how excited he was to have that time around Arozarena and around Duran and around Thomas to kind of really chat them up and talk. And I'm just wondering real quickly if you could explain, he's got some good outfielders here. He's got a good veteran in Brandon Nimmo. He's got two young good outfielders in Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter. But in this environment, right? In this environment where young guys kind of get to be more established teammates with veteran guys, and there's all this kind of common connection of heritage. How much do guys kind of get from the learning experience from one another in that environment?
I'll tell you what, I think if you take what he's been able to grab onto that last month in Mexico, and now this next 3 weeks coming up, I think it's like learning playoff baseball on steroids. I expect our team to do really well, and I think he gets some invaluable experiences. I think he's going to go back and he's going to be so pumped up to just be able to do anything that he can to help the Rangers win. I talked to Bobby Witt about his experience the last WBC where he didn't really play much. I think he only got 2 at-bats and he pinch ran. But he said that experience just changed him as a player, and it changed his hunger, and it changed the things that were important to him, right? Obviously, yeah, you want to make money and you want to do well personally, but it just puts into perspective why we play team sports, right? And to be a part of the team and to be a part of something bigger than just, playing baseball at a high level.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One other Ranger I wanted to ask you about real quick before we let you get out of here. You'll have Robert Garcia in your bullpen. Obviously, I think your closer position is pretty settled with the best closer in the game right now, and Andres Munoz. But how do you envision using Robert out there?
I think Robert is going to be, obviously he's too good to be situational guy. And then we have Victor Vodnik. So I think, yeah, we might try and if there's an inning, if the 7th inning is a lefty, righty, lefty, then that's probably when we'll use him in the 7th. If it's the 8th inning that lefties might be coming up, or there's a possibility of a pinch hitter that would be a lefty, then I'll use him there so that we stop other teams from bringing in whoever they might have. That's a good pinch hitter, right? So I see him as a 7th, 8th inning guy, depending on the matchups.
Well, last one here for me. So 3 years ago, your team, you got to the semifinals where you lost a nail biter basically to the eventual champion Japan. How do you? I mean, and as you go into this here, a lot of your team is back. Obviously, your nucleus is pretty good. Guys are pretty much a lot of the same guys. How do you handicap this year's WBC, and especially for your chances?
I'll tell you what, I think 3 teams have gotten better. Dominican is better. They were great last time, but they've gotten better. I think they're going to be more focused and hungrier. The U.S. has gotten better, especially on the pitching side. I think they don't want the title to leave the country, right? And I think Japan is really strong as well. I really do like our chances. I know maybe we don't compare to them on paper. At the end of the day, baseball is the one sport that a really good team can beat a super team on any given day. I really believe that. Maybe their pitching isn't great or our pitching is really good that day. It could be, you put together a couple good at bats, a ground ball with eyes or a blue pit, and that could be the difference in a game, especially games that are where the pitching and the defense is good. Anything can happen in a game like that. So I think we're good enough to compete with anybody. And if we're competing, with the team we have, I believe we can beat anybody. If you ask me, can we beat the U.S. or the Dominican 6 games out of 10? Probably not. Can we beat them 1 game on 1 day? Absolutely.
Hey, Benji, before we let you go, just last question. I think you play the U.S. 3rd game of the round robin, right?
Yes.
Who do you expect to face as the starter?
I've heard Paul Skeens, and I've been telling our guys when I talk to our hitters, I'm like, what a great opportunity you guys have. I mean, think about it. This is the toughest pitcher maybe since in 06 we faced Roger Clemens in an elimination game. I'm like, you guys get to go and face him, and whoever has great at bats against Paul Skeens, man, you're putting your footprint in Mexican history. So, Mexican baseball history. So, just be excited that you have this opportunity. We want to play the best. We want to beat the best. And in order to do it, we are 100% going to have to beat 3 of the best teams possibly in the history of baseball. The U.S. team, the Dominican team, Japanese team, and quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. Obviously thinking we're coming out of our group. We put together, 3 solid games where everybody's all in. We get a chance to make history. And honestly, I mean, I know I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but if we're able to win this tournament against the teams that are in this tournament, I'd say it's one of the greatest accomplishments in international play at any level. I mean, I'm talking 1980 hockey gold medal type victory.
I like that. I like that. Miracle on turf. Instead of miracle on ice,
Yeah,
we'll have miracle on turf. Benji,
Miracle
you've been
in
great.
Miami.
It's been great talking to you. Great catching up. I look forward to seeing Team Mexico, and I look forward to seeing you around this year at some point in time, too. So thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Benji. We really appreciate it. Good luck. Well, for this week's Archives in Arlington, we're going to look at another spring training site where the Rangers were for a long time, 16 years, in Port Charlotte, beautiful Port Charlotte, Florida, which for those young fans is kind of between Sarasota and Bradenton. No, I'm sorry, between Sarasota and Fort Myers on the west coast of Florida. Really hadn't changed much. I've been through there a few times in the last few years. Not a lot else there. But I will say, when the Rangers moved there in 1987, it was like a paradise for us. We had one of the nicest facilities in all of the Grapefruit League. For the first time, we had our major and minor league complexes together It was a new facility. It was kind of the envy of teams in Florida because, Evan, you go back to even when you started covering, there were a lot of really bad spring training facilities. And it had a lot of charm as a year in those early years. I'll tell a quick story, and then I'll let Evan give some of his memories. When we first got there in 1987, there were no hotels, motels of any consequence in Port Charlotte. And the first year we stayed, and we put the players up at what's called Palm Island Resort, which is about 17 miles from the complex, and there is very little between the complex and Palm Island. And the players were on the island, actually, the first year. They stayed like 3 to a house. It's beautiful on the beach. Problem is you had to take a ferry to get over there. And what happened is, and this ferry did not run 24 hours, and there were guys that would, some fairly often, after having a night out on whatever town they were in, probably had to go to Sarasota or Fort Myers, and they would miss that last ferry, and those poor boys would be sleeping in their car for the night. The other, and it also worked the other way. In those days, you had to make long road trips back then. We'd have to go to the east coast of Florida, Evan, across Alligator Alley for 3 hours, 7 o'clock buses, and if you missed that 6 a.m. ferry, you weren't going to make the bus going to the east coast. So that changed the second year when they opened the beautiful Days Inn, which is still there. Days Inn, which at the time had 6 outside lines in their phone system. So if you got players that were staying there and spent a lot of time with their family at night, it was very hard to make a long-distance call out of that hotel. And that went on for a lot of years.
Yeah, that was in the years before we all had cell phones.
That's correct. So your first spring would have been 97 in Port Charlotte. And what are some of your recollections of the place?
Well, it was just, it had this kind of decrepit charm by that point in time, I guess, would be the way I describe it.
Point.
The place really, it had been built, and when it was built, it obviously was the crown jewel, but it aged very quickly. And it had all these little peculiar elements to the facility, one of which was like, during the middle of games, you'd see media members. I don't want to single anybody out here, but one of them may still be doing Ranger broadcasts, would walk up a ladder above the press box to the flat roof of the stadium and sunbathe for about the last 6 innings of the game.
Yep.
That
was a design element we put in that press box, but again, we also envisioned a bigger press box. So
that one stood out. The other thing that I never got to see was a great story, and always Jerry Fraley told these stories in the best manner. But you apparently used to have, it was sponsored by the pest, the one of the mid-inning.
Truly Nolan Pest Control.
Truly Nolan Pest Control. Which used to have Volkswagen Bugs decorated like a mouse in South Florida. But
it's a great story.
They had kind of their version of the dot race, right? Was that they had 3
behind the outfield fence. Yep.
3 pests on
Mr. Roach, Mr. Ant, Mr. whatever, termite.
I think mosquito, right? It has
mosquito.
And that they would run around behind the fence as the kind of the 7th inning dot race or whatever. And I guess one year, I don't know what year this would have been. I don't know what player this would have been, but some player, I think, got the bright idea to like string fishing wire somewhere along the way, and
they were going like this, and all of a sudden you didn't see any roaches, any pests anymore.
It was a great deal for Truly Nolan. They got rid of the pests.
Right.
But I guess all the runners were tripped over by this. I believe Wayne Saladay was the emergency
management,
Charlotte County. Also did the play-by-play in the PA of the pest race. And I guess that in the middle of this, he basically had nothing to say except down goes the roach. So
that was one of our relievers that, as wont to be, relief pitchers seem to give the best pranks. But yeah, that is a true story. Another true story, which I'll tell real quickly, and this goes back to Palm Island. Bobby Valentine was our manager that first year in 1987. He stayed out there, and he rode his bike to the ballpark every day, like 17 miles both ways, and that was Bobby. I mean, he had to do everything full out. So one day, I'm driving to the ballpark, and believe it or not, I used to get there at 7, and I was one of the first people to get there. I mean, it has changed so much. And Bobby had gotten a flat tire, and he's on the side of the road, and I just went barreling by him. I don't know why. To this day, he still calls me out about it, and he was furious when he got to the ballpark, like an hour later, because I hadn't stopped and picked him up. But to this day, I don't know why I didn't do it. I really don't. Maybe I didn't know he had a flat tire or whatever it was. But speaking of managers in Port Charlotte, you remember Johnny Oates decided he didn't want to stay in Port Charlotte anymore. In the last few years, he would stay in Sarasota and drive to Port Charlotte every day, except when we played a game north of Port Charlotte, and then he'd meet us at the ballpark. So, yeah. But it really hadn't changed much. As I say, we left. It was in real bad shape every spring. The last few years, the bats moved into the press box during the off season. We'd have to clean out the bat mess and fumigate it was bad. And so we got the new facility in Arizona, but in 2009, the Rays, they rebuilt whatever it's called now, Charlotte Park, and the Rays are there to this day, but there is still not a lot around it there on El Jobin Road.
The most endearing memories, though, for me about Port Charlotte were, it was a different age in journalism and all of that, and so the camaraderie was obviously different, and much of the media would get together. Our group used to always show up at a little roadside kind of fish and wings place called Charlie's.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we all kind of developed our love of grouper sandwiches. Correct. But, kind of mom and pop place you don't see very much anymore. In a typical Florida, very shabby place, but great food. I'll tell one other story about Port Charlotte. Kevin Sherrington loves this story. But we were going to drive somewhere for a game, and we were going to have to eat on the road that day. And I had to stop for gas at the gas station on El Jobin. And we were talking about going to, a fast food place, going through the drive-thru or somewhere. But that gas station had a deli counter, and it advertised Cuban sandwiches. And I was a big fan, obviously, as you know, of the Cuban sandwich. And I was like, this can't be. It's a gas station. It's got to be wrapped in plastic. It's going to be cold. What kind of Cuban sandwich is that? So I asked the guy behind the counter, like, do you press your Cuban sandwich? You serve them hot? And he said, of course I press them. What kind of gas station do you think I'm running? So Kevin, to this day, loves that line. What kind of gas station do you think I'm running here? And the Cuban sandwich from that place, it was a Texaco. I don't know what the deli's name was inside. Was quite good. And there's a lot of days when I miss Port Charlotte, mostly because at the end of the day, you could go back to where you were staying and see the water. And the water,
that's what it all is for me. Water instead of desert. I never really got over that. Nolan Ryan pitched his first Ranger game in Port Charlotte. Jose Canseco and Julio Franco trained there, and those guys would commute to Miami a lot of nights so they wouldn't have to stay in Port Charlotte. Alex Rodriguez, we had him in spring training for the first time in Port Charlotte. Michael Jordan played there in 1994 when he was with the White Sox. So a lot of great memories in this week's Archives in Arlington from Port Charlotte, Florida. So with that, I thank you for joining us on this episode of SportsDay Rangers.
Be sure to check out other episodes and all our social medias. You can keep up with my coverage of spring training online and in the Dallas Morning News every day, along with myself and Sean McFarland. And you can leave us comments. You can criticize me. You can send me suggestions for hamburger spots that I should eat in Dallas for my side project. Anything you want. We really appreciate you listening to this, and we will talk to you next week, folks.